Let's be honest, we're all chasing happiness. But what if the way we're doing it is just completely backward? Today, we're going to dive into the mind of an ancient Greek philosopher, Epicurus, and uncover his pretty surprising secret to a genuinely happy life. And trust me, it is not what you think it is. So, let's just start with a quick question. When you hear that word Epicurean, what image pops into your head? For most of us, right, it's probably these lavish feasts, expensive wine, a whole life dedicated to luxury and pleasure. Just picture it. You got it? Okay, hold on to that thought. Because this is where it gets really interesting. There is a huge gap between our modern idea of an Epicurean and what Epicurus himself actually taught. We picture excess and all these sensual pleasures. He was all about tranquility, simplicity, and friendship. You see, the goal wasn't a life jam-packed with more stuff. It was a life free from pain. So, how in the world did we get it so wrong?
To figure that out, we have to start by knocking down the biggest misconception of them all, this whole myth of pleasure.
Yeah, the classic mix-up is getting Epicureanism confused with its, let's say, wilder cousin, hedonism. We just assume Epicurus was telling us to crank up the pleasure dial to the max, chase every thrill, give in to every single craving, and just live life with the pedal to the metal. I mean, you see this kind of thinking perfectly summed up by writers like Oscar Wilde. His characters basically live by this rule. If you have a temptation, just give into it. But, Epicurus would have looked at that and seen a total recipe for disaster, not for happiness, but for a life of constant anxiety and chaos. And right here, this is the key. For Epicurus, happiness was not about addition, piling on more experiences, more luxuries, more highs. No. It was about subtraction. The real goal was just to get to this calm, stable state of contentment by removing the things that cause us to suffer, both in our bodies and in our minds. Okay, so if the secret is to remove pain, what did Epicurus think was the main thing causing all our suffering? Well, it wasn't a lack of money or parties, it was anxiety. The Italians have this incredible term for it, mal di vivere. It literally means the pain of living. You know that feeling? It's that low-level background hum of dread, that feeling of unease that can just follow you around. That was the disease Epicurus wanted to cure. And he was incredibly specific. He traced this pain of living back to 4 big fears that keep us trapped. We're afraid of being punished by the gods. We're afraid of our own death. We're terrified that physical pain will be too much to bear. And we're constantly worried that we'll just never be able to find true happiness. This is why his whole approach to philosophy was so different. He wasn't interested in some abstract academic game. He saw philosophy as a kind of therapy. It was a powerful medicine for the soul, a practical toolkit anyone could pick up and use to heal themselves from fear and finally live a good life. And like any good doctor, he wrote out a very clear prescription. It's called the Quadripharmaco, which basically means the 4-part cure. Each piece of this cure is designed to directly counteract one of those 4 big fears we just talked about. It's this really elegant, powerful roadmap for finding mental peace. So let's break it down. All right, first one, don't fear the gods. Epicurus's logic here was actually pretty simple. He said, look, if gods exist, they have to be perfect, blissful beings, right? And a perfect being has way better things to do than to meddle in our lives and punish us. They're too busy enjoying their own perfect existence. So all that worrying about divine anger, it's a complete waste of our mental energy. Number 2, don't worry about death. And this is just a masterclass in logic. It's airtight. He says, death is the end of all sensation. We can only feel things, good or bad, while we have sensation, so we can never actually experience our own death. Think about it. It's the one event in your life story that you are, by definition, not present for. So why on earth would we waste our precious time being afraid of something that can literally never hurt us? By freeing our minds from these 2 gigantic fears, God and death, we can reach the main goal of his entire philosophy. He called it ataraxia. Now, this isn't just feeling calm. This is a deep, unshakable tranquility. It's a state completely free of all that mental static and anxiety. And for the body, the equivalent was aponia, the total absence of physical pain. So you put those 2 together, ataraxia in the mind and aponia in the body, and boom, you have the Epicurean definition of the highest possible pleasure. It's not some crazy party. It's the simple, beautiful state of being free from pain in your body and free from anxiety in your mind. That's it. That's the peak. So, okay, how do we actually live this way?
Well, the last two parts of his cure, that the good stuff is easy to get and the terrible stuff is easy to endure, they point us to the very practical art of simple living. To make it easy, Epicurus sorted all of our desires into three buckets. First, you've got the natural and necessary things. Basic food, water, a safe place to sleep. Second, the natural but unnecessary. Think gourmet meals or a giant mansion. And third, the vain and empty desires, that endless chase for fame, for power, for insane wealth. And here's his critical insight. True, lasting happiness comes from easily satisfying that first bucket of desires and then just learning to pretty much ignore the third one. And why is that? Because those vain desires, like fame, they have no natural limit. The goalposts are always moving, which just creates more and more anxiety. Real contentment isn't found in getting more, it's found in needing less. But even after all of that, removing our fears, simplifying our desires, there was still one final ingredient. And for Epicurus, it was the most important one of all. This wasn't about being some lonely hermit. It was all about connection. He couldn't have been clearer about this. He wrote that out of everything wisdom gives us for a happy life, absolutely nothing is greater than friendship. He was convinced that deep, real connections with people give us a sense of security and joy that no amount of money or status could ever even come close to. And this wasn't just talk, he lived it. He started a school in Athens he called The Garden, and it was less of a formal school and more of a community of friends just living and learning together. And in a move that was totally radical for ancient Greece, he welcomed women and even slaves into the circle as equals. It was a real community built on respect. But maybe the most powerful proof of his philosophy came from the man himself, right at the very end of his life. While he was dying from a really painful illness, he wrote a letter to a friend. He said that even with all the physical agony, his mind was overflowing with joy. And that joy was coming from one thing: remembering the philosophical talks he and his friends had shared over the years. In the end, it wasn't the absence of pain that mattered most, but the presence of friendship. So what Epicurus leaves us with isn't just a theory, it's a challenge. It's a philosophy to be lived. And it all starts with a simple question we can ask ourselves right now. What is one vain, empty desire, that constant need for more likes, more status, more stuff, that you can just consciously decide to let go of today, to make a little more room for your own garden of tranquility?
If a question made you stop and think, take one more second. Philosophy doesn't give easy answers, it teaches you how to ask better questions. Like the video if you enjoy thinking. Follow Philosophy LM and keep searching together.